Voting that was lawfully scheduled to start at 7 a.m. in many places began after 11 o'clock in many places. And on the part of the EC, instead of compensating for the lost time proportionately, the EC only extended the voting period by 1 hour, thereby disenfranchising millions of voters countrywide. It is this state that accounts for low voter turnout, estimated at around 30%. You saw the EC saying it's about 52%. That is hogwash. We all were there. We know no 50% turned up anywhere in the country. The situation was compounded by the late arrival of voting materials in many voting areas, which seemed deliberate. When the biometric system failed, the EC authorized the use of manual authentication of voters, with the clumsy reasoning that it was necessary to override the law in order to allow Ugandans to exercise their constitutional right to choose their leaders. How lousy. DF is concerned that contrary to the use of the biometric technology as the panacea to fraud and multiple voting, in many parts of the country, the decision to resort to use of manual verification was fraudulently exploited, resulting into multiple voting and ballot stuffing in many parts of the country. The legal basis for use of biometric voting outlaws manual voting automatically, providing that no one who is not biometrically verified should be allowed to vote. More still, that where the electronic system fails, elections at that polling station must not go on. That is the law. Notwithstanding all excuses by the Electoral Commission for the biometric mess, the DF has come to the conclusion that the Electoral Commission had not prepared enough to adapt to new technology, and worse still, the care had no backup plan. But like we said in the preamble, we contend that actually they were deliberately doing this to make the whole process messy and facilitate multiple voting and ballot stuffing. The EC did not comply with the law, and thus the recently concluded presidential and parliamentary elections was conducted outside the law. The DF observes that the biometric voter verification kits worked smoothly and effectively in selected regions and constituencies. You noted that in some constituencies, all machines were working, but failed dismally in targeted constituencies, resulting into fraud, voter suppression, disenfranchisement, and other election malpractices. That said, the DF hereby informs the country that we categorically reject the outcome of the entire presidential and parliamentary election process, and we are consulting on steps to take aimed at challenging processes and outcomes variously. You remember, citizens, that the DF has been at the forefront. We forewarned the country a priori, the elections, that we do not believe that the Electoral Commission had prepared enough to use these machines. Remember my last address here at the DF headquarters was particularly on those machines. And we're not here to say that it's a deja vu. We're just saying that citizens should learn to listen, and political actors should stop grandstanding, and they should learn to listen and cooperate. And now we know that actually the machines were not intended to facilitate an election, but as a facade to blur wide-ranging electoral fraud as we saw it. in various parts of the country. And therefore, as the DF, we cannot associate with an outcome, blood and littered, we're all over with fraud and malpractice. Remember, we talked about ill preparation, lack of training, lack of stimulation. You can retrieve our last presser. These are the issues. You must have moved with your cameras at polling stations, with the top officials fidgeting with the gadgets, and in many places, indeed the EC deployed and trained polling officials, essentially because they had intended to make the entire process messy to benefit and get particular outcomes. That is addressed on the machines. Secondly, the false declaration of results by presiding officers as a very serious electoral matter we established. DF is concerned by the rampant false declarations of election results by presiding officers in many constituencies nationwide. In the instance, authentic declaration of result forms were shortchanged in many places to include Masaka, Gulu, Soloti, Kampala, Mukono, Jinja, to mention but a few, with losers being declared as winners. It's now common practice that presiding officers falsify results and courageously announce losers and then scornfully advise winning candidates to agree by such fraudulent action to go to court. I'm sure you've captured many such courageous presiding officers, returning officers, telling winners to go to court and announcing losers with courage and straight faces. This has to be stopped. And we invite the next parliament, if it will have to any effect on elections, to take this as a major reform matter and enact a law to criminalize false declaration of results by presiding officers. Because apparently, because they have gotten away with so many of such actions, they seem to have made it an art of sorts now, that you can freely declare a loser as a winner. After all, nothing will happen to you. As the DF, a party that believes firmly in a wide-ranging constitutional and electoral reforms, this is a major reform issue that must happen if Ugandans will continue having trust in electoral processes going forward. 3, man of declaration of presidential election results. DF is concerned by the manner of declaration of presidential elections results, which leaves no room for verification. The country must adopt a process where agents of presidential candidates should verify the authenticity of DR forms at the EC National Tally Center before declaration, which is not the case today. The presidential election results, therefore, announced by the EC in the present circumstances cannot be verifiable and are prone to falsification. This urgently calls for fundamental reform. But you remember, the DF offered a solution in our reform document that presidential election results should be declared at a district level to avoid transmitted fraud as results move from one area to another. And I hope those who desire to see Uganda change for the better will learn to listen. Because when you offer these solutions, we were scorned, shockingly, by parties in opposition. And I have seen one of them say, we want the EC to upload all DR forms. It's nonsense. Because even if they upload it today, they have already falsified them. We offered a very simple solution that lies in informing the law on the presidential elections. So we insist as the DF that that's the matter. We're not going to let lying. We're going to pick it up from where we left it. And now that we have many victims we hope that we'll have people to listen going forward for involvement of the military and security agencies. The DF decries the blatant involvement of the military and security agencies in the election process. And we have said before, this is contrary to the law. There were several polling stations positioned inside military installations, the police and prisons. For instance, in Entebbe municipality, those who followed, several polling stations were located inside the army and police barracks. In Masaka City, the same thing. 2 polling stations were positioned inside the Masaka police barracks. And in Luzira, in Akawa East, 4 polling stations were positioned inside the Luzira maximum prison. Polling agents and other voters were denied access to these installations, rendering the process really incredible. By law, the role of the presiding officer and peace, the role of preserving order and peace during elections is that of the police. Uganda must join the League of Civilized Nations, where elections are civil processes requiring no military intervention. The UPDF constitutional role is to ensure security of Ugandans and their property by ensuring Ugandan borders, by securing Ugandan borders and from foreign aggression and threats. Elections per se are not an external security threat, and therefore it is imperative that the UPDF remains neutral rather than a partisan actor in Uganda's political process. On polling day, I'll give an example in Luzira. Voting started, I think, probably around 5 a.m. And by the time the agents of our candidates arrived in Luzira on the gate, the boxes were all full. Boxes at Luzira. And they were inside. And there was no access. This is what happened. I personally called the commissioner in charge of Kampala, Dr. Simba, and raised this matter with him. And he said he has extended the matter to the returning officer of Kampala, the one Mr. Kasasha, I think. Kasacha Rashid. And he said, Kasacha said he has failed and referred the matter back to Dr. Simba. So I called back Dr. Simba. He cannot deny this. Dr. Simba told me that I should extend the matter to the chairperson, Justice Byabakama, that he has also failed. So I called Justice Byabakama. Luckily he picked. He said he has referred the matter to Dr. Simba. Now, yeah, so what are we talking about? So that is part of what happened. You can ask them when you meet them at the press whether I called them about Luzira, and they said they had no solution. So effectively, the EC had sanctioned the fraud in Nakawa East. That happened in Masaka. Dr. Abed can give you a long testimony of what happened. In Entebbe, the Honorable Kakembo called me around 11 o'clock and said, what's going here is just drama. I just want free meat for future use. Probably my children will see a film of what was supposed to be an election. And said, there's nothing I can do. The military is voting in rounds. They have made a circle, they vote, come back, or vote, and go. So that's the kind of nonsense, you know. So the UPDF, its rank and file, must reflect on their historical role as the people's army. The day the people will imagine them as their enemy, they will certainly not be the UPDF anymore. And these are the kind of processes upon which they must reflect on their historical mission. If their historical mission is to sustain an agenda that disenfranchises the citizenry, then certainly they are not for the people. And they must reflect. 5. Syndicated and deliberate ballot staffing and multiple voting, favoring NRM and NUP candidates against DF candidates. The DF has taken note of very deliberate and syndicated acts of a cabal of actors who took advantage of the failure of the biometric voter verification kits to execute a syndicated plan of fraud involving multiple voting and ballot stuffing. This greatly affected and disadvantaged our candidates in parts of Masaka, Dokolo, Mora, Gulu, Kadel, Wakiso, and Kampala, where both opinion and exit polls indicated DF wins. And I want to tell you, go and verify what happened in Mora district for the woman MP seat. What happened in Dokolo North. What happened in Aru North, Kadel district. What happened in Agago East. You'll verify, you'll find out. I'll give you an example. Go and find out the voting machinery in the buses that spent days in Masaka and began voting in rounds from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. and the voting patterns and what happened. So as the DF, we took note, and as we continue to verify and authenticate the actors, we will be communicating with the country. As the DF, it is wishful and far-fetched that anyone can stop the party of hope and promise from going the journey we intend to go. And we are here to assert that we are still on our journey and nobody will stop us. We are intentional in our actions, we are deliberate, and we are going to stick to our mission. One may delay but cannot deter the forward march of Ugandans to freedom, democracy, and liberation. Finally, a call for reforms, transition, and reconciliation. This is the flagship act of the DF. The DF finally reiterates and reaffirms stand focus to an agenda for reform, transition, and national reconciliation, and remains committed to a process of dialogue with all national stakeholders in pursuit of the said and published agenda. We have luckily published this agenda. It's not a secret. It's not convoluted. We believe acts of merely participating in elections for election's sake can never propel this country to the next level. We have gone back to our text, which we shared to all and sundry, that the country must, as of necessity for its own survival, because must elections be carried out in the manner they're being conducted, certainly it puts the nation into a kind of existential threat as a state, as a nation state, with a predictable democracy agenda that the DF wants to offer leadership. Where other parties are timid to reach out, the DF has no such cowardice. We are available to speak to those who want to speak on the language of reform, to change the trajectory of this country, because this country belongs to us. But most importantly, we want to speak to posterity, not simply daily bread. There's today, there's tomorrow, and there's the future, which future belongs to everybody, including our great-grandchildren ahead of us. I want to thank you once again, the media, and I pray this time around you are less breezed than it were. Don't take that as uhuru. It's not yet uhuru. It is actually the calm before the storm. Your participation and involvement in making these issues serious issues, not issues to scorn and imagine that those who are raising them out of anger. None of us here is angry. But we are very concerned stakeholders in this country. And then you wonder, that's why Africans actually are spoken about in derogatory terms. That you go to procure machinery that cannot work in this era and time. That for 5 years you prepare to use a machine in one day and it collapses on the day you're supposed to use it. And you stay in the office. That's why Africans are looked at as really very funny, you know, Homo sapien, you know. So where is criminal liability to those who participated in the expenditure of more than 150 billion Ugandan shillings for pure air? I want to thank you, the media, for this precious time. And on behalf of the DF, we are thankful for the time we have worked with you. We will continue working with you. Our agenda as the DF remains on track. The election was mere an event on our journey, and we shall continue propelling this journey. And I want to invite the membership of the DF, including those intending to join the DF, that the DF was not founded for the purpose of an electoral event, but for the purpose of being an integral part of democratizing Uganda and calling out everybody to get involved in ensuring that Uganda makes the next big step toward being a constitutional and enduring democracy for God and my country.